This is something I've been meaning to do for a very long time. And seeing as it's Christmas, this is going to be occupying Dysfunctional News's Christmas message. I'm going to go right back to the early 80s to begin the story. In the early 80s, I had a desire to find out whether God really existed or not. And I'd worked out that God is a vast being of immense proportions. So I thought that every single star system and galaxy within the whole universe were just the atoms of God, the smallest part of God that there can be, and God was outside of the atoms. The atoms formed his skin and his bones and his inner body. So that all of those things, those galaxies, were parts of God. And God looked down on everything that was him. So that's what my belief was in the early 80s. But I felt that there was something still not quite right about this great cosmic intergalactic God with all his atoms. And I thought to myself, well, you've got to prove that you exist. This universal, this cosmic God has to prove that he exists. And after months and maybe even a few years of waiting for him to prove that he exists, I was going round the bend a little bit, in desperation to find out whether this God really existed or not, because he wasn't proving himself to me. So my wife suggested that I should see the doctor. So I went to the doctor with all my writing and thinking about God. And he said, I want you to go and see somebody. And I thought, well, he's going to send me to see a shrink or somebody, but I'll go anyway. And after about a week of waiting, I don't know how long it was, I can't remember now. I mean, it was 34 years ago. I went to see a man at a house in Solihull, and I knocked on the door, and this male voice said, come upstairs. And I thought, bloody hell, that's a bit strange. So I opened the front door, which was, open, it wasn't locked or anything, and walked up the stairs and entered the room that this man was in. And he was sitting at a computer. I mean, that was 1984. He was probably a word processor. And he was typing away. And I said, the doctor sent me to see you. And he introduced himself, said his name was John Flanner. And he said, well, can you read to me some of your writings that you brought along? Because I'd taken me writing along because I think the doctor told me to, so I did. And he said, well, something like, I can't remember his exact words, but perhaps he said something like, I believe in a different God. And I was really shocked. I couldn't believe that somebody should believe in something greater, but not greater, but not what I thought was not as great as the cosmic God, the universal God. And he said to me, if you ask this this God into your heart, he will prove himself to you. And I thought, okay, fair enough, I'll give it a whirl, because my God isn't doing anything, but this guy's God might. And he said, well, we've got to pray. And we prayed, and he got me to ask Jesus into my heart, so that he'd enter me in some mysterious way. And I can't remember, the details after that, really. But I ended up going back home, and oh yeah, I remember that John Flanner had asked me to start reading the Bible. I think he'd even give me one to use and to read. And he gave me bits to read, like studying, really. And I went to his house every morning for 7 days on the trot, and we were reading bits of the Bible together. And I suppose that was it, really. Some strange things happened, like being able to cycle to work in about 8 minutes instead of 15 to 20 minutes. But I really was pedalling hard. But Saturday came along eventually, and I needed somebody to go and have a game of snooker. And I went to my mother's house because I got a window cleaning round, which gave me a couple of quid a week to go and have a game of snooker. And I couldn't be bothered to go and do some window cleaning. And eventually, Mum said, "Do you want to borrow a couple of quid off me?" I don't think she said borrow. She wanted to give me a couple of quid just to, go and have a game of snooker, because it was a game that sort of took some of the stress of life away, really, being able to concentrate heavily on a game of snooker. So I had the couple of quid off my mum, and I went down to the snooker hall, which was on the country road, and I went inside and sat at the bar, which was a non-alcoholic bar, and chatted to the person that was behind the bar for ages and ages and ages, what seemed like ages, and nobody was coming in. The place was completely empty, and I was the only one there. And I got really fed up and started playing on the one-arm bandit. And at first I thought, well, I'll save enough for at least an hour if somebody comes in, and I put it all in. And eventually I went back to the machine a second time and put the rest of it in. So, I got that fed up that I wasn't bothered about a game anymore, and I'd end up going home. And eventually I pumped every single penny into the one-arm bandit. And God, this voice that I was hearing, mysteriously in my head was saying, don't waste the money, don't put any more money in. You're just wasting it. It's your mother's money that she's given you. Don't waste it, don't waste it. And I ended up not listening to this voice, which was not in my head, but seemed to be probably all around me, but not all around me. How can I explain that? Anyway, I went back home and the whole house was in turmoil. The kids were screaming and Maggie was shouting, and Maggie's the wife, and she was shouting and ranting and raving and swearing. And I thought, I can't ask God to forgive me for wasting all that money and disobeying him, because by that time I thought to myself, what if this voice is God speaking to me? And I can't stay in the house, I thought to myself. I thought I'll go over the local park and into the fields at the back of the park and be alone with God, and I asked this voice in my head that was still saying, you've been a silly boy. Be alone with him. Be alone with this voice, so I could be forgiven for wasting the money that my mum had given me. So I went over the field. Well, I went over the park and started walking across the park, and the voice in my head was saying to me, you're going to lie down soon. And I thought, oh, I'll lie down where I want to. I won't sort of listen to you and listen to what you're saying. So I walked across the park and the voice kept on saying, you will lie down when I tell you to. And eventually the voice said, lie down now. And I said, no. And I don't know how many times I said no, I can't remember. But eventually the voice seemed to get that strong that I thought, well, I might as well lie down where I am. And I lay down and asked God, this voice in my head, to stop being so nasty to me and keeping on and ranting and raving. Not ranting and raving, but being authoritative is probably the word. And I lay down and I sort of asked him to forgive me for wasting my mum's money and for not listening to him sooner. And eventually, after sort of saying things, I went into a sort of very relaxed state of being. And when I came to, sort of thing, although I was conscious, I didn't feel as though God had forgiven me, even though I was really relaxed. And I started getting even more sort of demanding that God said, and I realised, I think, to myself that perhaps this was it. This was God proving himself to me. And then I sort of went off again into a sort of deep trance of some kind. And as I was there in this sort of peaceful state of being, this little girl started crying. And she said, I fell in the stinging nettles, I fell in the stinging nettles, get me some dock leaves. And I just said, Jesus, stop her pain and stop her crying. And she stopped straight away. She was about 100 yards away. And I said, after a while, they'd gone off to play, and I just lay there thanking God that he was real, this Christian God, that had proved himself to me in less than a week, and I've been waiting months for mine. So, after a while, I took a walk across the park, and I saw this girl. Her name was Claire, and I said, can I have a look where you've been stung? And she showed me a leg, and there was nothing there. at all.